This is Bringing the Darkness to the Light with Catherine Nadal, professional psychic medium.
Today's guest is U.S. Navy SEAL and founder of 62 Romeo, Robert Sweetman. Robert joined the Navy at 28 years old to become a Navy SEAL. By 29, he completed BUD's Class 284, where he sustained a quadruple hernia requiring surgery. He served for 8 years, where he did 2 deployments with SEAL Team 7 and became an instructor at Advanced Training Command. He was medically retired after a back injury, but had multiple other hidden injuries. Those included post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, traumatic brain injury, TBI, obstructive sleep apnea, and insomnia. Robert tells the story of using Ambien to go to sleep and stimulants to wake him up. At one point in time, he was using NyQuil to go to sleep at night. Then, on April 23, 2017, one of Robert's platoon mates, Ryan Larkin, took his own life. Ryan had been struggling with sleep for a long time, along with PTSD and TBI. Robert was impacted by Ryan's death and took it upon himself to better understand why this happened. Ryan's father, Frank, launched research on TBI while Robert dove into sleep science. After years of research, Robert discovered the bi-directional relationship between sleep and mental health. Poor sleep can cause mental health conditions to include suicidal ideations. Robert dedicated his life to the study of sleep science to help all people, especially veterans, and 4 years later, he founded 62 Romeo. It's a pleasure to have you on. Hi, Rob.
Thank you, Kathy. Appreciate it.
I am very excited. There's very impressive bio, of course, but I'm very excited to tell the audience that I'm one of your new graduates of 62 Romeo. I was very lucky to be part of your program. Just finishing up, we went through the summer, and I met you actually at Tunnel for Towers. They had an event called Hold the Line, and you were one of the guest speakers. And so I really want to see how you can explain this whole program to everyone and tell us more about you, because as much as I know about the program and I know about the great work you're doing, I don't really know about you. I mean, I understand you're a Navy SEAL, but what happened to you? What was young Rob or childhood Rob? What was that all like for you?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the kind words. I don't know why that intro landed and that bio is present on the website. I just feel like I'm wandering through life. Um, I'm not sure that I feel like any of it is super impressive. I just do what I do. I'm from a child growing up in Kansas on ranch land and more of an agricultural family, to moving to the Carolinas. My dad was looking for work, um, to becoming an insurance agent in my early 20s. We built a huge business, my cousin and I. My cousin passed away in a car accident, and somehow I just ended up in the Navy, right? I did 8 years. I broke my back. I was medically retired. Not a lot of people know that, right? They think of a Navy SEAL as somebody who is, impervious to damage, that just can withstand anything. And I withstood as much as I could, but I couldn't withstand that. Actually, the doctor wanted to cut me open and either go through my stomach or go through my back to put this scaffolding. A lot of people have had this surgery successfully, but it seemed kind of scary to me. They wanted to fuse 3 different levels of my spine, and I felt like I was not able to perform. But I felt like if I did that surgery, I would be worse off in the long run. And I told him that I was not interested in that surgery and he could go fly a kite. And that got me on the fast track to getting med boarded out of the Navy. So as I'm leaving, I really was feeling depression coming on because, I mean, geez, everything I ever dreamed of was right in front of me, and I'm a Navy SEAL operator. I'm doing everything that young men dream of doing. What a lucky guy, right? And now all of a sudden, I'm hurt. I can no longer be a SEAL. I cannot be the man that I thought I was. just simple things like being able to get out of bed and stand up straight and function and lift things, and all of that was being taken away from me. And so there was, and by the way, I'm still in the teams. So now the guys are looking at me like, well, you're broken. You're no longer useful to the platoon or the team. So I had to take a knee. I transitioned to an instructor billet, and I was hoping that things would get better. They never got better. And along that journey, I picked up a lot of drinking alcohol. I was eating bad food. So now I'm gaining weight on top of the back injury. I'm less mobile. I'm not able to do it. This is a downward spiral, not good. And then I actually lost 7 people in 2017, all very sad situations. But some of them could have been predicted. But the one that really got me, the one that you mentioned, was Ryan Larkin. And the reason why that would messed with me was because I looked at him as a golden boy, right? He was also a Navy SEAL. He was a sniper. He was a medic, and his father was a Navy SEAL. So I'm looking at it like, wow, this is the ideal Navy SEAL. And for him to take his own life was devastating, because I wondered, okay, if this guy can take his life and he's a better SEAL than me, I mean, things are not looking that great for me. Maybe I end up taking my own life. Now, this time I wasn't having suicidal ideations, but I thought to myself, well, what if I go down that path? It didn't make any sense to me. None of it made any sense. And so when I looked at his situation, I thought, okay, what happened here? Why did Ryan end up committing suicide? He was awake for 5 days before he hung himself in his dad's basement. He was not sleeping a whole lot leading up to that, but that's not abnormal. I mean, we all have bad sleeping habits in the teams, or the majority of us. But what I saw was this abuse of Ambien, right? The Navy was passing out Ambien to us so we can fall asleep on deployments and all these long rotators and stuff like that. And then you also had things to stimulate you, right? To wake you up. So I saw this vicious cycle of stimulants to wake up, sedatives to fall asleep. And I wondered, what if this has an impact on us? What if we're not getting full recovery through sleep? And so I thought to myself, well, does sleep even matter? Like in the teams, we definitely don't think that sleep matters. Otherwise, we wouldn't stay awake for 5.5 days in Hell Week and, the buds training and all that stuff. And there's a culture surrounding sleep deprivation. And there's a bit of bravado that we even see across the military and in first response that, I don't need sleep. You can sleep when you're dead. Sleep is for the weak. If you can't take it, get out of the kitchen, right? If it's too hot. If you can't take this job, maybe you should go work at Walmart. I've heard comments like that. And so I started on this journey. And as speed began to pick up in this journey, it solidified in my mind that, like, oh, yeah, this is something. This is something that I need to address. It's a big deal. And I think I'm going to dedicate my life to this, because this took my friend. I'm on the edge with it. And it seems like it's widespread. It seems like sleep deprivation is very present in the military. And later I found out in first response. But the big question was, is there a true connection between sleep health and mental health? And that was the question that led me on my journey to where I am today.
Well, it's pretty incredible. I know losses and dealing with grief also, I have found, has had a huge correlation with sleep health as well. So you mentioning not just losing Ryan, but losing other people all in the same year. And it's pretty incredible what a lot of people go through. And so I just wanted to thank you for sharing your story with that. Can you tell me, like, did you reach out and when you met Ryan's father, like, how did you do this? Did you do this collectively together with his dad, or were you doing two separate things and then coming together with what you were finding out? How was that done with Ryan's father?
Yeah, Ryan's father, Frank, was working at the Senate as the Master of Arms. And at that time, he had to step down. And his opinion, so these old frogmen, he came a couple generations before Ryan and I. They came from a very different mold, right? This older generation, they're had very much touch points with the World War II generation, right? That were just so tough and resilient. Um, And so there's this echo of just toughen up and move on. And there is something powerful about that, right? Stoicism, um, how do we sort of man up? But in this day and age, the culture has shifted in the United States, and our perspective on mental health as well as emotional intelligence has really caused a new generation of children who are now going into service to be much, much more aware. The conversation about mental health is being had. The conversation about emotional intelligence is being had. The ability to communicate. The female population has demanded that men communicate more on an emotional level. I've noticed that over the last 10 years. And, I'm not here to say whether that's good or bad. I think that it is positive to be able to analyze our emotions and how that impacts our well being. And so, my conversations with Frank, Ryan's dad, surrounded more of like my perspective of, hey, maybe we should take a look at mental health. And Frank's perspective was, mental health is not something that his generation ever talked about. So let's take a look at the neurological impact of blast exposure across a career in the SEAL teams. And so his perspective was, let's take a look at traumatic brain injury. Let's take a look at blast exposure and how that impacted Ryan's brain. And so Frank went down the path of not only, supporting the dissection of Ryan's brain and of the analysis of the scarring in Ryan's brain. We call it astroglial scarring. It's a scarring of the white matter in the brain that tends to only be present in blast exposure. We don't see as much of the same types of scarring if it's, for example, blunt force trauma brain injury from like football. Although football and blast exposure sometimes can have similar symptoms, both are TBI. There is a difference in blast exposure TBI and that blunt force trauma TBI. So Dr. Pearl and Frank really, honestly, they took the football all the way down the field as far as they could go with traumatic brain injury research. Ryan Larkin, his name is now at the triage clinic over at New York Presbyterian. So Frank did a great job. But where Frank focused on the physical and neurological aspects of Ryan's situation leading up to his suicide, I wanted to focus on more of the cognitive, psychological, and behavioral, right? I wanted to say, what was Ryan doing and what was Ryan thinking that led up to his mental health situation? I wanted to talk about that word mental health. And that's not an easy topic. I think that we've really come a long ways in the military, and first response is starting to come around, but it's a tough topic. And people look at mental health, it's like, okay, and this is the fault of the psychological community, the pharmaceutical community, the insurance community, and the DSM, the diagnostic manual for mental health conditions, because what they're doing is they're labeling you. And I'd like to talk about that and why that is important today in the 62 Romeo program. But when they label you, now you're broken, right? And once you're labeled, sometimes that sticks with you for life. And it definitely sticks with you as a stigma if you're labeled as a mentally weak person in a operationally high risk job. For example, SEAL teams, firefighters, whatever. Like if your buddy is now labeled with major depressive disorder or some type of mental health condition that now there's recommendations of pharmaceuticals and therapy, and we don't know, we don't know if we can rely on this person. It's a slippery slope. And so what do? We stay away from that. We don't want to be labeled because we don't want to be broken. Or if we are broken, we want to hide it so nobody knows because we want to keep performing. We want to keep serving. And a lot of times it's for the right reasons. We want to serve people, potentially save lives. But if we're taken off the field and we're put on the bench, what good are we then? And now we're back in that situation where I was feeling when I was physically hurt, like I can't be myself. I can't do my job anymore. So I really wanted to get into the nuances of mental health from a perspective of like, okay, you're not broken, right? Let's just take an honest look at where you're at with your mental health. What specifically were you doing that contributed to your mental health situation that led up to your suicide? And alcohol is definitely in the equation, but the poor sleep habits, predicated by, drugs, Ambien, stimulants, and that poor cycle that puts us into a really broken sleep pattern. All of those things led up to not getting good sleep, and my belief is that not getting good enough sleep somehow led to a mental health condition severe enough for Ryan to take his life. So the difference, to answer your question, is while Frank was taking a perspective of Ryan's traumatic brain injury caused him to commit suicide, my perspective was Ryan's poor sleep health caused his mental health to be exacerbated to the point where he committed suicide. We'll never know the true answer, and we do not have a solution for suicide, no matter how much we talk about it. It's just an enigma. But if I can help at least one person not get to that point through better sleep health practices, that's what I want to do. And I do that every day now.
Well, you absolutely do it every day now. I have to tell you that when I started with you in July, I was a little like, okay, so what is this going to be like? And once we started really looking at everything that we were doing, it was like pretty incredible. I didn't realize how badly I had no discipline on myself. So there was some nights that I felt tired and I would just go to bed. Other nights that I would just stay up because I have to be on email, I have to look at social media, I have to, and I was looking at like the clock like, wow, I can't believe I'm up this late. Why am I up this late? And I kept finding more and more things to do. And you mentioned one thing in that whole, conversation we just had. But a lot of times, people that have served, and I was always multitasking because I was full-time nurse. I was in the Army Reserve for 30 years. I always found things to fill my time. And a lot of that is called avoidance, right? So if we're busy, we can't be working on what we should be working on. And when I met you and then we had a conversation on the phone, I wasn't really sure I really needed it. And then when I told you that, I have the exposure injury from being in Iraq and I have, nodules on my lungs and then I have asthma. And then I had this sudden pulmonary embolism in 2020 where the VA doesn't understand where I got it from. And then there was this concept of like, well, if you had it once, you may get it again, or you may fall asleep and never wake up. And it kind of impregnated in my mind this idea of fear. And I was already avoiding things before. So now I'm dealing with fear and avoidance and just what I call bad discipline, So it was just really a gift to be paired up with you and your whole team, especially all the people that were kind of associated with your program. So I wanted to see if you can describe kind of walking someone through that, because not everyone would be eligible for your program. But I find just answering the questions on the questionnaire really just made me realize that I probably had a bigger problem than I realized. So can you talk about kind of going through the questionnaire or going through it's funny because towards the end of the program, you gave us all a chance to say something. And I said, my name is Kathy, and now I know I have a sleep problem. But in the beginning, I didn't realize that. So it's kind of like self-admitting.
Well, we all have our own paradigm, and it takes a little bit of an explanation on what good sleep health looks like to be able to self-identify. Oh, that's not what I'm doing. Oh, you mean I should be able to sleep throughout the night without night terrors? Oh, you mean I should be on a set schedule? That's not just for my children. That's the hardest thing for us as parents and as adults. It's like we want to tell our kids, you better be in bed so you're not sleepy for school the next morning, but we don't follow our own rules. It's kind of funny, actually. But the reason we have the questionnaire, you mentioned the questionnaire is part of the process in getting started with 62 Romeo. And if we go all the way back, and if we go to 62romeo.org, this morning I just posted the original pilot study documentary we did. We did a pilot study that kicked off this whole thing. Simultaneously, I'm doing a documentary. I love putting way too much on my plate. So this documentary that I just posted on the website is still live on Vimeo. You can see a little bit of what was going on. This was what, 3 or 4 years ago? So basically, we were conducting an academic study. And so the questionnaire originated with that academic study. And we wanted to filter for people Now we're not doing an academic study, and there's no need to filter for people other than we just want to give a little bit of a disclaimer like, hey, listen, if you don't want to commit to coming to the Zoom calls, don't waste our time. If you're not really ready to take this seriously, don't waste our time. And if you have a life threatening situation like obstructive sleep apnea, which some people don't even take seriously, they don't even acknowledge it, like let's identify that early on. And then, of course, if there's ways that we can tease out people who are having suicidal ideation, like in that process, a lot of times that remains hidden. And that's not our focus, is to identify those people. But if that comes up in conversation, we will find additional resources to help that person. It does happen from time to time. But we really want to find out, like, hey, number one, are you ready for this course? And number two, are you going to take this course seriously? So, in doing so, we want to ask some questions leading up to this. You know, like, do you have life situations that are preventing you from sleep? Do you have any medical situations? Do your dogs sleep with you at night? Do you cohabitate with your children? Surprisingly, sleeping with other human beings and animals does affect our sleep. So just looking at those sort of things doesn't necessarily disqualify you, but we're starting to have those conversations, right? We're starting to identify what's going on during sleep. Now, there's two different perspectives on sleep. And the one that people are ready to talk about, right, is what are the physical aspects of my sleep environment? People love to talk about the sleep dojo. What are the life hacks that I can do? Like, can I make sure that it's dark in my bedroom? Can I make sure that the temperature's cool? Can I make sure that the noise is lower? Right. Those are things that people can look at their room and say, I can change that. I can make that commitment. But where it really gets difficult is in the behaviors. Right now, we're saying, okay, we've got our sleep dojo dialed in. I love using that term, sleep dojo, by the way. It really, I think, shifts our bedroom into a framing, a psychological framing of, oh, this is a place that I have a little bit of respect. It's a sanctuary where I'm going to improve myself. That's absolutely important because the psychological associations surrounding the bedroom are very important. But getting back to behaviors, now we're saying, okay, the sleep dojo's good to go. We've put a check in the box on the major items. Now let's turn it around on you, right? Because sleep, we're really not doing anything while we're asleep, right? At least not during this course. I wrote an algorithm on biofeedback that I'd love to have patented. I'd love to be able to introduce that for folks so they can actually help them while they're sleeping. But short of that, what are we actually doing? We're not doing a whole lot. We're either hoping that we get good sleep and it goes successfully, or we hope we get good sleep and it doesn't go successfully, right? It's kind of feels a little bit like a roll of the dice. So what I'm doing is I'm shifting the focus to what are you doing while you're awake? So now we're taking a very different perspective. And now sleep becomes more of a barometric pressure reading to how you're doing at life while you're awake. How are you doing with your stress regulation? How are you doing with your nervous system? How, you know, what are your behaviors? Are you drinking a bunch of coffee before bed? Are you drinking a bunch of alcohol? Are you drinking yourself to sleep? In the fire service, and I don't mean to throw anybody under the fire truck, but a lot of times the conversation is, when I go to bed, do I do one finger or two? And what I'm referring to is how much scotch are you going to drink to go to bed? That's not good. It should be no alcohol. But these are the behaviors that some people take on and they normalize it, right? So now we're talking about this stuff like, what are you actually doing in your life? Are you getting sunlight in the morning? Are you taking a walk? Are you telling your body, this is what it's like to be awake so that it knows what it's like to be asleep? And there's a little bit of reciprocity there, right? There's an ebb and a flow, just like the ocean, just like the moon, just like everything else, right? We need to have an oscillation within our body. And if we're stuck in a cubicle, we're not getting any exercise, we're eating junk food all day, we're not taking care of our body, then it's time to go to sleep and we're up all night and we wonder why, right? So I'm throwing a lot of tips for your listeners out there on how to get better sleep. So if we wake up and we increase body temperature, we increase perspiration, respiration, sunlight, this vitamin D, right? We're doing all these things to really be alive and awake. I promise you're going to sleep better at nighttime. It's just simple stuff.
Yeah, well, you're really amazing. The other thing that I thought was interesting is we started to get into the program, and early on, you said that you were going to send a box. And inside the box, it was like receiving a Christmas present or something. There was a T-shirt, and then we had a workbook, and I was like, okay, all right. And then there was two other boxes in there, And one of them was called The Hatch. And I immediately went to YouTube and said, all right, I have to figure this one out. And I can't tell you, I should be like working for the Hatch right now because I'm telling everybody about the Hatch. So the Hatch is one item, and then there's a sleep mat. So see if you can give, the background to why these items were chosen and what they do during 62 Romeo. And I mean, I would promote both of them. I was just recently out to dinner and I was showing someone the whole month of the color coded sleep mat. And just because of the color codes, they could tell. They were like, wow, you did do better on, the second month. So it's interesting if you could just fill that in.
So when we did the first pilot study, we actually used something called the yoga sleep node. Now, I can't use that term because I lost a trademark battle on that one. We changed it since then to the sleep frog, right? Because I'm a frog man. It's the sleep frog. It's kind of catchy. But anyways, I created a very unique piece of equipment that had a zero blue light. Now, we were outsourcing to an American made company that creates these organic light emitting diode displays. It's basically a light that has no blue in it. And then we had a second light that had a full spectrum light. It did have blue in it. And so we were simulating sunset and sunrise in this very nice piece of equipment. I was trying to get it off the ground. That was the whole reason why we're doing the study. But the study turned out to be so powerful and impactful that my timeline for getting this product out was too long. I said, you know what? Let's just go to Amazon and find something close enough and continue doing the program. And that's what founded the 62 Romeo nonprofit. And so what we found was the Hatcher store. Now it does a pretty daggum good job. And I'll explain why we use that. Okay. So there's a little bit about circadian scheduling. So what does that mean? Circadian, we've heard that word before, circadian rhythm. We have a rhythm, right? Well, actually, we have a lot of different circadian rhythms going on in our body simultaneously. And if we're not sleeping consistently, they can get all out of whack, right? Imagine your hormones being out of synchronization. And now all of a sudden, you're feeling hormonal changes when you shouldn't, right? And then you don't feel good and you wonder if there's something wrong with you. No, you just need to go to bed on time. You need to have better bedtime practices, right? So when you feel those hormonal changes because you're not having a consistent sleep schedule, you're not broken, right? We can get you back on schedule, as well as breath work to, battle some of the obstructive sleep apnea symptoms. Anyways, I digress. So when we're taking a look at this scheduler, we're doing a number of different things. Number one, when we push the button, and if you pay for the subscription, you can get the automation, but I don't recommend people pay for subscriptions, right? So you push the button when it's bedtime. Now, during that 1 hour period of time, right, that light is on, we call that a wind down routine. So again, for your listeners, it's actually kind of important to do a wind down routine. We've all heard about it on the internet, but we don't know what to trust. This information, that information. I'm telling you, do a wind down routine. It's not just me. It's not just the science. Think of Marcus Aurelius, the emperor, right? He talks about bookending your day. Open your day and close your day. We're talking about closing the day, which means if you close your day, you have to take off the armor that you had to put on to face the world, because the world is a tough place. Sometimes it's tougher than others. Sometimes we get news that we don't want, but we have to be able to relax and wind down, or we're never going to get the sleep that we want. And if we don't, then we're not recovered and we're not 100% the next day, and it's a vicious cycle. So we're putting away the day, we're winding down, we're getting into our safe space. And one of the things that helps out with that is a little bit of white noise, a little bit of, rumbling thunder, a little bit of rolling creek. You pick your noise, but the light is going to be zero blue to the best of our abilities. We want tranquil lights, and we're getting into our little Zen state, right? We want to get into a relaxed mode. And so let's call it 45 minutes to an hour, but we're pushing that button on the Hatch Restore, and it's doing all of this. It's turning on the light. I should be a Hatch representative, right? Just like you. They give me no kickbacks. They give me no discounts. I really wish that Hatch would reach out and help me out, because we've been running this program for years. I've sent them lots and lots of business. Eventually, I'm just going to take their business because they won't respond. But Hatch Restore provides light and sound at nighttime. So you push the button, the amber colored light comes on, and we preset this so that it works out the way that we want to. It doesn't work this way out of the box. We have to put the correct science application to this device to make it work the way we need to for the expected outcome we want. So you push the button, the amber light comes on, the sound comes on, and then at 1 hour, we've set it up to go black. It goes black, it goes dark, but the sound continues on. And the reason for that is because we're sensitive. Even when we're asleep, we're sensitive to the outside world, to the noise pollution. It's going to trigger you, it's going to wake you up. That's how we stayed alive. You know, you hear the twig snap and it's a tiger, right? This is in our DNA from thousands, who knows, millions of years ago. Depends on the scientist you're talking to. But that is a function of our brain. We're never completely turned off. So if we play a little bit of white noise or whatever floats your boat, that actually buffers out a lot of the noise pollution that triggers us. Now, if you're a hypervigilant person, hyperactive amygdala, you've got trauma, you're dealing with stuff, you're even more sensitive. It's even more important to take this advice. But either way, that's what the Hatch Restore does. And it is also a Pavlovian trigger. All right, let's just be honest, right? If we look back at Pavlov won the Nobel Prize for PETA would be all over this today. You can't do this stuff today, but he was measuring the salivation of dogs based on triggering their food response alongside a belt. And then he removes the food, he continues the belt, they still salivate. It's like, that's something interesting. Well, guess what? Humans are the same way. We're not that far from dogs, right? Let's not get into that topic. But the point is, Pavlovian triggers are absolutely a thing. And so if we push that button and the light comes on and the sound comes on, and we associate that with a positive sleep outcome, then we automatically get into this relaxation mode. So the more and the more we do all of these things, as well as social cues, what time are we eating bed? What time are we starting? Maybe we do a little breath work, a little yoga. All these things, we start to get better and better and stronger. And one individual thing can trigger all the rest of them, right? So we're getting into good behavioral practices, and the Hatch Restore supports that. The other thing you mentioned is the Withing sleep mat. And the reason why specifically we use the Withing sleep mat is because it's pretty accurate for a contactless sleep measurement device. Now, rule number one is that we want everything to be easy and automatic in the 62 Romeo program. You know, I'm a team guy. I come from the Navy SEAL teams. Like, if it ain't easy, we're not going to do it, right? I don't want something that I have to charge every single night and I'm going to forget it and like all this stuff. It's too much of a headache. We want to hit the easy button. So truthfully, once you set that up, unless you have power outage, Wi-Fi shuts down, something like that, you should be able to set it and forget it. If I can use Ron Popeil's, quoted, I don't think that one's trademarked anymore, but set it and forget it. You just want it to be automatic. And so you plug this thing in and it just works. Okay, so that's rule number one. Rule number two is we want to measure everything. We want to put our money where our mouth is, right? We're not just something like, oh, we're going to sprinkle some fairy dust on you, everything's going to be okay. No, we're going to measure everything. And if we fail, I want you to know where we failed, why we failed, and how we failed, because that's how we do it in the SEAL teams. We don't hide anything. We don't want to say, hey, we're a therapist and we're going to therapize you, but don't measure any results, right? And don't publicize it, right? No, I want everything publicized. And that's why we're the best. We're showing everyone, hey, look, we're measuring everything every single day. 42 days, we're taking objective measurements with a Withing sleep mat. It's not perfect, right? But I would say that 42 days of 80% accuracy within measurement, that data set is better than 2 days in a sleep lab at 100% accuracy of measurement. Why? Because across 42 days, we can draw a line. We can see a trend. We can say either it's getting better or it's getting worse. We can see a general idea of how this, and that's more how our life works, right? We want to get into the bedroom, into our normal behavioral patterns, and see what sleep is really like. Additionally, we're doing sleep logs every day. So that's a subjective measurement. So now we have subjective and objective every single day for 42 days. We take clinical surveys. Oh boy, the psychiatrists and psychologists love that. We're using literally the exact same forms they use: clinical surveys, intake and outtake, snapshot before and after. Now we're putting our money where our mouth is, and we're saying, hey, let's see how we did. How can we improve? Because the thing that I want to do is save people like Ryan. I can't save Ryan, but I can save people like him. And when that is the mission, you do whatever it takes to help people.
Yeah, it's just such an incredible program. I have to tell you, though, speaking about the Hatch, there was 1 or 2 nights during the program that I had to go out of state and I wasn't able to bring it with me. And I actually had a harder time falling asleep because I already got used to, having all this stuff happening. And even my cats, like I have 2 small cats, they're not even a year yet. And when I set up the sounds, I have, like it sounds like a gentle rain. And I wake up every morning to the chirping birds. And now they're so into, kind of the routine. Once the chirping birds go, which is all the time before my alarm goes off on my phone, they jump on the bed. So they know it's time to get up now. So I was like, wow, that's kind of interesting, The other thing that I want to say about the sleep mat is that it is really simple. And I like that it's color coded because you can actually tap it and it shows you all the columns. It looks like you're looking at an Excel and you could really get involved with it. But just seeing the colors, like there was 1 or 2 nights, and you had mentioned this earlier, that things happen during your day, like you're not expecting it. And there was 2 times that I received very bad news. And I thought to myself, I was dreading going to bed. And it was one of those nights that I was like, well, I won't turn on the hatch right away. I kind of delayed sleep. But I knew I was going to have a red dot in the morning, and I did, because I was automatically saying that I can't avoid it because it's the bad news. Now that the program's over, now I feel so differently about that because we can't avoid bad news. Bad news is going to happen. We're not in control of it. But after graduating from 62 Romeo, there's so many tools that I have now in my toolbox that I know that I can go to one of Janelle's meditations. You had sent me a meditation that I have now on my phone as an app. So there's many things that I can do instead of avoiding and going to the TV and trying to use that as a distractor. I can actually take it in a more healthier way and do like a meditation, and also going back and looking at the workbook, because the workbook talks about topics, and the topics have to do with sleep, but they really have to do with your personality, and I really not just learned about my sleep and about, of course I have sleep apnea, we all have problems, but to look at it in a positive way. Like having these problems is not necessarily the negative. Having these problems are a part of life, and what can I do with the positive to make my life better? And I mean, it's incredible. I've told people at the VA about this. I've told soldiers that I've had in the past about this. I've told civilians. I want to make sure that the audience realizes that it's not just military. So how do you get the participants? I think we had some police and fire as well.
Yeah, so I want to give myself a plug at this time. Here's what is coming for 2025. And this is going to change everything for 62 Romeo. It's going to change everything for our graduate community. And my goal, thinking beyond just helping the individual like Ryan get better sleep, I want to develop a community that changes our culture around this sleep deprivation, this badge of honor that the United States has. It's sick, it's not helping anyone. And I want people to get better sleep. Better sleep leads to all kinds of better health outcomes. And so the way that I want to do that, the next evolution, I've been working on this night and day, is the Sleep Genius app. Now, the Sleep Genius app is something that I'm releasing at the end of the month. We're in beta testing right now. And what this is going to do, it's a free app, right? Everything I do, I try to provide free resources. Um, Sometimes there's additional things that might be a good idea to buy after. Like right now, I would tell you that you can buy the Hatch Mini. It's a portable travel keychain device that might help you when you're on travel, right? But we can't afford to buy that for everybody. So there's a lot of recommendations out there. How do I recommend everything? How do I remember everything? I can't. And so what I want to do is put all of those resources in the Sleep Genius app. That means from now on, starting in 2025, we'll be doing all the Sleep Genius programs in that app. We're going to do the 62 Romeo programs in that app. We're going to have free meditation courses in the app. We're going to have all the resources for all the audio files that you guys are looking for in the app. Everything will be in the app. Not only that, but we're going to have groups. So now your cohort has a special group where you guys can communicate with each other within that app, and you don't have the fear of losing it. If you don't have your signal, if you delete it off your phone or something, your group will always be alive within the app. Additionally, we'll have forums. So now people can go to the forum and know that there's moderators that they can trust. Questions like, I can't sleep at night. Do I have insomnia? What about my sleep apnea? What about this? What about that? I want to encourage these conversations and then bring in additional experts from Harvard, from these different locations to come in and answer questions. But this is my dream And it's finally happening, a one-stop shop where everybody can come in for everything related to sleep. And it's not trying to sell you something, right? We will have paid courses that'll be a little bit more advanced. And I want to start teaching other coaches on how to do what I do so we can exponentially grow this, because we have millions and millions of people. I mean, you wouldn't even believe the statistics, because you're at the VA, you see that. It's absurd. There's no way to conquer this without duplicating myself and getting more sleep coaches out there. I've already got 3 in the process. So everything will be within this app. I have a lot of high hopes for this app. The app will also mirror the website, so you can go to it on a computer, so you can see stuff on a big screen. But I'm really, really excited to release that app. That will be available at the end of this month. And then getting back to enrolling in 62 Romeo, right now you still go to 62romeo.org, 62romeo.org. I'm going to have all the information that I just mentioned on there. That original Vimeo video of the documentary, you guys can watch it there. You can sign up for 62 Romeo there, right? We have a streamlined system that is cleaner than it's ever been. You just go to the website, you put in your information right there, boom, boom, boom. It'll set you up with a Calendly call. So you can jump on the call with me for 15 minutes just so I can talk to you, like person to person, say, hey, here's what to expect. There's another section on there where you can request support, whether you want 50%, 100%, scholarship, what type of financial support do you need? That's what we're always trying to get sponsors in there for. And so the final thing I'll say is people out there that want to help, that want to donate, that want to encourage getting veterans and first responders through this program that some of them desperately need, I am always willing to have that conversation. All of this is based on donations. We have some sponsors that are really just heaven sent, like Reliable Automatic Sprinkler Company, Creative Builders out of Greenville, South Carolina, and a number of smaller donors that come in and just give a little bit. Those people are what keep the lights on with 62 Romeo.
Yeah, it's really an amazing program. I just really just think it's really something, and it's coming from a place where you can say, I have experience. A lot of times, you'll come across, people and programs and you say, well, how did this get started? You have a lot invested in this. It's coming from a really good intention, but it's coming from your heart because you realize that this is bigger than you, and it's not going to go away, and this is one of the things we would talk about a long time ago, especially being in the military. We would talk about you have to have the proper sleep, but more importantly, you have to have the proper nutrition. And this is something that I really struggled with, and it was one thing that I really realized during 62 Romeo was that you were asking us, so when did you exercise? Are you exercising? Are you able to exercise? What are you eating? And it made me become more really realize what I was eating. I'm a caffeine person, and since I graduated 62 Romeo, I don't make any caffeinated products in my apartment, which is like incredible. And that's crazy because I wrote a book about coffee. So, but I actually say, like, if I want to have a coffee, like on the weekends, I will walk into into my town, sit down and have a cup of coffee in a place, not bring it home. So I'm really changing kind of my own behavior with that. I know that you had offered and you had put it in our box, but it was a packet called Moonbeam. Could you talk about that? Because I haven't tried it yet, but I'm interested
Absolutely.
to know about that. And
So Moon Brew is an all natural supplement. And the reason I have this one here, and I'm happy to talk about them, because I just struck a partnership with them. Now, it's not a paid partnership. I am only supporting them because I truly believe in them. And in return, guess what? They're going to give free samples to our 62 Romeo people, right? That's how much they care about the veteran community. That's how much I care about working with somebody that's making something that actually works. Now, this product differs from other products because, let's say, Rise mushroom tea. Like, I originally was looking at some of their stuff, and the way that they advertise it is a sleep supplement, but they don't talk about the melatonin they put in there. Well, I'm anti-melatonin. I'm not saying that melatonin doesn't have its time and place, but people abuse it, and it's completely unregulated. And by the way, we have a pineal gland that produces melatonin. We don't need to. What we need to do is exactly what you said. Take a hard look at our choices. right? A little bit of accountability, a little bit of exposure, a little bit of looking in the mirror, right? Not that there's anything wrong with anyone, right? But when we're honest with ourselves, we can make an assessment and course correct, right? Well, this sometimes can be helpful, right? Because I don't normally push supplements, but if I am going to push supplements, it's got to be something that's healthy, that's all natural. And what we have in this chamomile, lavender, turkey tail, reishi, fuling, bai hay, spearmint, ren, wanzi extract, lemon balm, valerian root, jujube seed extract. And then there's also some more active ingredients, rose extract, L-theanine. We talked about that one. Magnesium glycinate and magtine, right? These are all very healthy natural ingredients. None of this is going to have any side effects except for the L-theanine. Sometimes that can cause vivid dreams. And if you're into dreaming, good, take more, right? It's a great thing. The only risk with this is if you have night terrors, you might want to be careful using L-theanine. And I've talked to the company about that, right? Is there a version without that? But it's a very low risk thing, right? There's no melatonin in this. There's no sleep sedatives in this. This is just all natural things. We've all heard of chamomile, right? So these are all natural things that I feel comfortable supporting. It's the only supplement that I currently support. And because I believe in them and because they're on board with exactly what we're doing at 62 Romeo, we're partnering only in the regards that I will talk about their product and they will send me free samples to send all the beautiful people that come through 62 Romeo because it's good stuff. It works. You're not going to get high off of it. You're not going to get like the THC gummies or the CBD stuff. It's nothing like that. It's very simple, high quality fruiting body herbs that when put into the supplement, I like the chamomile rose tea. That's my favorite flavor, but everybody likes the hot cocoa. That's like the hotness right now. Those are the two big flavors they have. But this company is legit. They're doing the right thing. They've got a high quality product, and that's why I'm sending it out to 60 Romeo people.
Wow. So what does the rose tea taste like? Does it have like a flavor? Or...
Well, so I am a tea person and I do tea ceremony. I'm no expert in this, right? But there are people who are experts and they grow this tea in Taiwan for potentially hundreds of years. They have different strains. So it's a whole leaf plant from a seed with no herbicides, pesticides, anything like that, grown in an organic manner, very healthy. And they cultivate these leaves and either they ferment them or they dry them directly. It's very high end teas that I drink. So I'm totally into this stuff. So when you talk about rose tea, it's like, yeah, I'm on board. But it's a little bit strong and robust for some people. So if you're into that, rose tea for sure. But if you're more of a hot cocoa person, that's a little bit more G rated, if you will, right? It's all the same ingredients, just different flavor.
All right, great. Well, I still have my sample from my box, so I'm going to definitely put that on my to-do list for trying it. You know, I have to make mention to something you said earlier, and you mentioned melatonin. And that seems to be the go-to at the VA because I remember complaining probably 2 years ago that I was struggling with sleep. And that's what they gave me. They gave me a big bottle of melatonin. And over the last 2 years, when I've really been desperate, I've taken it. But day one, you in 62 Romeo said you were against it. And I literally put it away. I was like, if Rob doesn't believe in it, I don't believe in it. And that's a huge compliment because I remember how you feel when you wake up after taking melatonin and you actually have like a weird, I don't know, I feel a little fuzzy from it, but it feels like a hangover feeling. And it's weird because it's supposed to be like all natural, but why do I feel like not myself when I wake up?
Okay, so first of all, the medical community, which is a large driving force at the VA, I know they are integrating a lot more yoga and mindfulness and softer practices there, which I'm very grateful for. Biggest healthcare organization in the country for sure, but I think in the world, right? VA health system is crazy big. So they're big moving parts, right? And so you have the medical community. What is okay blanket statement? And they're saying that melatonin is a low risk supplement. That's true, right? You're probably not going to have a heroin overdose from taking melatonin, right? Because it is, right? Relatively low risk. But what are we doing here, right? And there's an ongoing debate in the community behind is ingesting melatonin different than the melatonin that is produced in the pineal gland? And yes, of course, it's different, right? But when we look at what do we need, right? Melatonin that's produced in the pineal gland, the way that it is produced is based on our circadian rhythms, right? So we have a lot of different factors that lead up to sleep. right? And lead up to melatonin production, GABA production, and all these healthy things that occur as part of the sleep process. Why are we drugging ourselves up with anything to include melatonin to go to sleep? It's because our body is not ready to go to sleep because we are not preparing. We're not doing the things that and sometimes like we have a death in the family, we have trauma, we have things going on. I get it, right? We try to return back to the good behaviors. But on a normal day throughout the year, like you should not be having sleep issues every single night. It's a problem, right? And most likely it's what you're doing throughout the day. So what we want to do is do the right things throughout the day so that our melatonin is produced naturally and normally so that we get the effect that we want at sleep. So the first thing is that the brain produces melatonin. Why do you need to take it, right? Let's take a little bit of accountability. What are you doing that's stopping the melatonin production in your brain? Now, true, after 60 to 70 range, we start to see a little bit of deprecation in melatonin production. Okay, fine. Maybe we can supplement a little bit with that if we notice that our melatonin levels are dropping. But how much? Because melatonin affects cortisol. They're reciprocal, right? When melatonin goes up, cortisol goes down, and our body is behaving in this way. Do you really think that you can take drugs or take supplements like melatonin, right? That is something that our body, a hormone that our body is producing, and have no effect? There's no consequence to that. Think again. There's going to be maybe smaller consequences than taking actual non-benzo drugs like Lunesta and Ambien. Forget about it. Like that, just don't do it, right? Do not get addicted. Do not get sucked into that, right? But if you're going to take a supplement and you want to take melatonin, what are the effects of that? Well, some of my colleagues would say that that is hormone replacement therapy, a version of that. Some people would say, no, you're crazy. It's totally safe. It's totally fine. The VA being one of those. But I would ask the question, why are we doing this, right? So let's say that there are a couple of reasons why we would take melatonin, right? So let's say we're jet lagged, right? Because if your body is producing melatonin at a certain time based on certain cues, like, daylight coming down, we're seeing more amber colors, more red colors. The retina is communicating with the brain. Now it's time to start down regulating. The body is actually doing this, right? But now we switch time zones. Now we're in Japan. Now it's daylight when it's supposed to be nighttime. We're all out of whack. Now it's nighttime and our hormones are not yet caught up yet. So let's say it takes for every time zone 1 hour is 1 day of recovery. So if we go 8 hours time zone, I'm not sure how many Japan is away from here, but you have 1 day to recover from every time zone jump, right? So whatever. So let's say we've jet lagged and now we know within reasonable doubt that we're not producing melatonin because our body has not adjusted yet. Okay. In this situation, it is recommended potentially to take some melatonin, right? It's okay. You're going to have a hard time going to sleep. You're on a different time zone. Let's try to stay up a little bit longer so we build up that sleep pressure, but we know we're not producing melatonin yet, not in the right way, so we take a little bit of melatonin. How much is that? Herein lies the next problem. It's completely unregulated. So if our brain is releasing something closer to a quarter of a milligram, something closer to that, it's even less actually, right? Then how much are we ingesting? Well, I got to tell you, when you go to the store, it's more like 5 milligram, 10 milligram, 20 milligram tablets. And by the way, none of that's regulated. So we don't know if a 5 milligram tablet is a 20 milligram tablet. So imagine getting the smallest tablet, a 5 milligram, which could be 20 because it's completely unregulated, and trying to chop that into 20 pieces so you can take a little sliver and take it for the recommended dosage to replace what you're not getting from jet lag. Listen, people do not need melatonin. In certain situations, if you're getting a little older or if you're on jet lag, maybe you can take a look at your blood work and see maybe it's time to supplement a little bit with melatonin. But in most situations, it's the behavior. Let's fix the behavior that's leading up to sleep and then allow your brain to produce melatonin like it should. There's a big controversy about is blue light affect sleep or not, because we've always thought, at least in the last 10 years, blue light affected sleep. Now there's this one big study that came out that says, oh yeah, people can go to sleep fine if they look at their phone before bed. The study's not long enough. What I can tell you conclusively is that within these research studies showing melatonin levels when we expose the eyes to bright light at night, or specifically the blue spectrum, we do see deprecation of melatonin production, meaning we can phase shift someone's melatonin production by shining bright light before bed in their eyes every single night consistently in the laboratory, right? So stay off the phones, right? Do yourself a favor, get some exercise in the morning, show the body that you're awake and alive so that it knows when it's time to go to sleep. Right? There's these innate things that are going on, these cycles, these oscillations in our body. We're no different than other animals. Your cats, they get it. The moon, the
Yes.
sun, the ocean, everything just moves in these oscillations. We shouldn't fight it. We should just go with it. Right. And we have so much more to talk about. Maybe we could do another podcast, like how are we dealing with the traumas of our existence? Because we're complex as humans, and our perspective on life sometimes leads to our own self-perpetuating, cycles that we're just stuck in it. We can get out of that. Some of that we can resolve through dream work, right? But we can get out of that. We don't have to be a victim to our own thoughts. Animals don't do that. We don't have to either.
Yes. Well, I think you made a great point about needing to bring you on again because I've been invested in a lot of work with dreams probably over the last 20 years. So I know that you're going to be working a lot with dreams in the future. You have a lot of upcoming classes. Can you just plug your social media, your website, so that everybody can get in touch with you? I know here in the New York City area, I've been promoting you. You just did a Navy SEAL swim right by the Statue of Liberty, and you were also given a great honor at the 9/11 Museum and Memorial. They raised the flag and float. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, we raised nearly 700 grand for the Navy SEAL Foundation by swimming across the Hudson River. I always get a lot of scrutiny from New Yorkers. Get out of the Hudson. What are you doing? You're going to die. I have an entire thread. I got like 1 million views on one post about, swimming the Hudson because people are so bent out of shape on what my superhero name's going to be after swimming this thing. But anyways, a bunch of Navy SEALs, this is like breakfast to us. No big deal. It is very difficult. We allow patriots to come in. If you want to reach out to me, if you want to be a part of our 62 Romeo team, we bring the biggest team out there. But we swam this thing, 3.5 mile swim. It is difficult, not for a Navy SEAL, but it is difficult swim. We also run something like 3.5 miles, carrying flags, bare chested, full American patriotism. Never seen so many American flags in my life. Under the Statue of Liberty, couldn't be more patriot. It's a message of unity. Bill Brown started this with a bunch of other Navy SEALs. I'm a part of it now. It's a message of unity in our country. I don't care if you're Democratic, Republican. They're telling us that there's something different about us. There's nothing different about us. We're all people and we all love this country. So a message of unity. We do that every single year to raise money for Navy SEAls. We just lost a couple of Navy SEAls fighting the turds out off the coast of Yemen when they were attacked. It's really a shame. But anyways, we raise money for them. And then when I go to New York City, we always like to have fun. But they surprised me this year because of all the hard work I've been doing with 62 Romeo and all the lives that I've changed. They took the flag down from the 9/11 Memorial Museum, folded it up, and surprised me. They awarded it to me for the work I've done at 62 Romeo. And of course, I was in tears. I didn't know what to say. I was actually in shock. But I have that flag now. That flag is going to go in a case. I'm going to frame it. And that, honestly, Kathy, that's probably the most honorable moment I've ever had in my life.
Wow. Well, I was a volunteer at the 9/11 Memorial and Museum. And let me tell you, that is well deserved. That is a well deserved honor. And the work that you're doing to help us and to continue to keep all of us in your work and plan for the future is really incredible. So if you could just plug your social media so everyone can jump on, seeing what you're doing.
My social media is all surrounding Sleep Genius and 62 Romeo. Sometimes the spelling is a little off, SLEEPGENI.US. That's my website. That's where you can find a lot more resources. That's where the app is going to be connected to. And then I'm going to roll 62 Romeo into that because Sleep Genius is starting to have a following. People can really connect with that verbiage, that name. And I'll tell the story on our next podcast on how I got that name. I am the Sleep Genius. But that's 62 Romeo, 62romeo.org. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on TikTok. I'm on Twitter X. I'm on Instagram. All of the social media platforms. We're always trying to post a positive message about sleep, about resilience, about positive mental attitude, about unity. All of these things are things you're going to hear about following us on social media. And I am unstoppable. I was medically retired from the Navy, and this is all I do. My entire life is committed to this, and I got a lot more years. So a lot more to come.
You sure do. Well, thank you again for being on the show, Rob. Have a great night. Thank you.